am Sister Madison, and I will be Sister Lily Marie. And I think it's so beautiful. You're going to get to hear a little bit from each of us, and each of us have a very different story. You might hear some similarities, but we have totally different hearts, totally different stories. So you're going to get to see how really the Lord goes choosing each one. Sorry, I'm going too fast. The Lord goes choosing each heart, the ones who He wants. So, I was not raised in a Catholic family. I was not raised in a Christian family. I was raised in an atheist family. And I wouldn't even so much say that they were atheist, although my dad is like a self-proclaimed atheist, like he says that. But really, it was more like growing up in a world without God. They never spoke to me about God. I have a super loving family. Each of them, my mom, my dad, my two little brothers, and my sister, they're each like my best friend in their own ways. Like I can't choose a favorite. But we didn't have God in our life. They never spoke to me about the Lord. We never went to church. We weren't baptized as babies or anything like that. But my family, something to know about them, both my parents are artists. So I grew up with two artists for parents. And that is a very interesting way to grow up. It was a blessing for me. For example, my living room growing up was always half art studio and half living room. There'd be like paint like on the floor, like a little paint stain. And I always grew up washing their paintbrushes, and our art in our house was always my parents' paintings. And my dad on the weekends, he would bust out his electric guitar. And I just thought everyone's dad was that cool. But then I started to go to my friends' houses, and I was like, my dad is so much cooler than yours. I thought all dads were like that. So we would always grow up singing on the weekends, my dad playing his guitar, painting, drawing. But we never, even though my parents had these beautiful gifts, we never spoke about the Lord. So I grew up with a lot of creativity and passion in my heart, but no direction for that passion. I had this intense desire since I was very small to give myself totally to something. I always had this desire for something more since the time I was very little. I did a lot of, I did sports, I did clubs, I did theater, writing, poetry. I did all of the different art things. And I remember I would have rehearsal every day, then I would go to the mall with my friends. I would spend time with my beautiful, loving family. And then I was in like 7th grade. And then I would get home at night, and I would finally lay my head on the pillow, a little like 13-year-old, and all of a sudden, it's like this emptiness would come upon me. Like I would feel it on my chest, like laying in bed at night, and it's like this thought would come into my mind. Is this all there is to life? Like I was doing all these beautiful things, all these good things, and yet I wasn't satisfied. And I couldn't figure out what would satisfy me. So every week, my poor parents, I would change my mind about what I wanted to be when I grew up. So one week I wanted to be a pilot, and my parents, they're so supportive. They would decorate my whole room in airplanes, and they would like paint clouds on the ceiling and everything. And then the next week I wanted to be a doctor, so then they brought me all the books of doctors, and every week it was something different. But nothing ever seemed to satisfy me. And then this continued, always this desire and this fire in my heart that there has to be something more to life, and I don't know what it could be. And I couldn't find it. I could never grasp it, which is why I would always end up changing my mind about what I wanted to do. So finally, I was in high school, and this desire never left me, this desire for something more. And high school was actually a time of a great stripping in my life. The Lord really went stripping me of all my securities and of everything I thought my life would be. Because I wanted to do musical theater, I wanted to do Broadway, I wanted to be a teacher or a psychologist. I had all these plans. I was gonna marry this boy that I was dating in high school. I had like this great friend group, and we were all gonna get married at the same time and have babies at the same time. And then in my junior year of high school, my family went through a really hard financial situation. And we lived many months without electricity, without running water, and then finally we lost our house. And we would have been on the streets if it wasn't for my grandma who took us in. And we moved into one tiny room, and the 5 of us lived all together in that room. That was our bedroom, our kitchen, our living room, everything. So it was it went on like 2 years of some, well, really like 4 years of some intense suffering in my family. I saw my parents really struggling. And it was in that stripping Then in the midst of all the stress of that, I lost the boyfriend who I thought I was gonna marry. We broke up. And then my friend group, we ended up going different ways because of something that was happening in my heart. Because I was being stripped of everything I thought my life would be. It was like this whole building that I had built for my future suddenly like caught on fire, and the whole city had burned down. The whole city and my future had burned down. It was just ashes on the ground before me. And I was like, what am I gonna do with my life? And then all of a sudden, those fundamental questions from when I was a little 13-year-old trying to fall asleep at night started coming back to my brain. What's the meaning of life? Is this all there is to life? Is there nothing else? What is this intense desire in my heart for something more, and why won't it stop? And so, because of that, I began to ask a lot of questions about God. And there was this girl, like you saw in the Kahoot game, there was this girl in my US A-Push, if you know what it is, AP US history class, and I sat right next to her, and I knew that she went to a Catholic school her whole life, and then for high school, she went to a public school, thank God, because I met her. And I sat next to her, and we would talk, and apparently, I don't really remember this, but she told me, I would just ask a bunch of questions about God. Like I would just ask her, like every day I would drive her crazy, asking her questions about God and about the Catholic faith and why these Catholic people were so weird. And then finally, one day she says to me, she said, you're always asking me about God, so why don't you come to a Sunday Mass with me and you can just see for yourself, because I don't have any more answers to your questions, I don't know what to tell you, so you just have to come, why don't you come to Mass with me this Sunday? And she was like, and afterwards, she was so smart. She said, afterwards we can get pancakes, we can go, have brunch, you can put on a cute dress, it's gonna be great. And I was like, okay, yes, I love cute dresses and I love pancakes, so I will go to this Mass. And afterwards we can have brunch together and we can go out, it'll be great. And so I went to Mass, and truly that Mass changed my life. It was in that Mass, I had absolutely no idea what was happening. I didn't know why everyone was standing up, sitting down. I looked so lost, because when you're Catholic, you know what to do. But when you're not Catholic, you go to Mass and you're like, oh, they're kneeling again? Okay, they're standing up again? Well, now we're sitting down. What are they? They're reading from this book. I had never read a Bible in my life. I had never seen a crucifix in my life. I didn't know, maybe I had seen a crucifix maybe in a movie or in a friend's house, but I definitely didn't know who the man on the cross was. I didn't know that that was Jesus and that Jesus is God. I didn't know any of those things. So, during the Mass, although I had no idea what I was doing, and everything sounded like it was in another language, like I didn't understand the liturgy at all, I felt in my heart this feeling like I was at home. And like all these people in this church were like a big family, and I had this great desire to be a part of this family. I didn't know anyone there except for Sarah, who's now my godmother. I didn't know anyone there except for her, and yet I wanted to be a part of this family that I sensed they were. So I received a huge grace that day, and I don't know how. The Lord worked a miracle in my life that day, because I wasn't baptized, I had no sanctifying grace, nothing. And I walked out of that Catholic Mass, which really, that's the power of Mass, of the Holy Mass. I walked out of the Mass, and I looked at Sarah, and I said, I don't know what just happened. I don't know what they were saying. I don't know who the man at the table is up front, but I want to be Catholic. And she was like, what? You came for the pancakes and you want to be Catholic? And I was like, yes, I want to be Catholic. What do I have to do? And so she told me about baptism. She told me about RCIA. And I was like, I want to do all of that. But then, like a month later, COVID hit. And so we couldn't go to church. We couldn't do anything. I couldn't go through RCIA, go through the process of becoming Catholic. And that was, at that moment, that was the only thing that was certain about my future. Everything else was uncertain. I had no idea what I wanted to do with my life anymore. I had lost my whole plan for my future had just crumbled. But the one thing I knew, no matter what anything else would come, whatever I was going to be, I wanted to be Catholic. And I wanted to have God in my life. So I went to college with this in my heart, that I had no idea what I wanted to study, no idea what I wanted to do, but I had to come to know God. I wanted to know God. I had no idea how to pray. I would see in the movies that they would kneel down by their bed. So I would kneel down by my bed at night. I thought you could only pray at night before you go to bed. So I would kneel down by my bed at night, and I'd be like, God, if you're real, And then I would like start talking. I was like, if you're really real, or if you like actually exist, and then I would like start talking. And I was like, I think that's how you like pray, I don't know. So I would just like talk out loud, like kneeling down and I would like go like this with my hands because they do that in the movies. So I'd go like this, and then I would do my little prayer. But I really had no idea what I was doing, and I had no one to guide me until I went to a few more masses after that before COVID got really serious. And I remember going to the mass, and in the area where I lived in Illinois, the church is not very active, unfortunately. So it's mostly like a few old people who go to mass, and the priests are very old. There's not a lot of vocations. So I remember like saying, God, why have you placed this fire in my heart for a church that seems like it's sleeping? Like for me, like the priest seems like he's sleeping, the people seem like they're sleeping. It feels like I have this fire in my heart, and I'm sitting here in this chair. I didn't know what a pew was. I'm sitting here in this like area where they sit in church, and I have this fire burning in my heart, and I don't even understand what they're saying. Like I'm going crazy, what's happening to me? And why does no one else seem to have this? But then I got to college, and it was a public university, the same one as Sister Samantha, and I knew her before the convent, and I knew Sister Allison and Sister Gabrielle as well. And then I went to this Newman Center. It was my first night on campus, and I looked up ISU Catholic, and it took me straight to the website. I saw pictures of nuns on there, and I was like, no way, nuns are real. Like, this is crazy. But at the same time, I didn't know anything about the Catholic Church, so I just thought like, yeah, I guess Catholics have those like women who like they wear that. Like, so I knew nothing about the Catholic Church, so I was like, okay, yeah, nuns. Like, it didn't shock me that much because everything was new. I knew nothing about God. So I go to the Newman Center. I went to every single event. Like right off the bat, I went to everything. And the sisters would come talk to me. I remember one of the sisters, Sister Nedielka, if you know her, now she serves in Poland. At the time, she wasn't a sister yet. And she came up to me, and I was wearing this blue dress. I really liked fashion before the convent a lot. I still like fashion. I think this is my best outfit so far in my life. Well, the best one is to come in 9 days. But she came up to me and she was like, you're wearing a blue dress for Our Lady. And I was like, for our who? Like, what are you? But she was like, how beautiful your blue dress for Our Lady. You got dressed up for Our Lady to come to Mass. And I was like, what are you saying to me? Who is Our Lady? But so I started to go to everything off the bat, like right off from the start of the school year, I went to everything. And my favorite thing to go to was Bible study. And you might have saw in the Kahoot, I would take like these ferocious notes in Bible study because really, it was the first time I had ever heard the truth in my life. I was talking with one of you about theology of the body and how you're learning all these things, and it's like putting a fire in your heart because no one ever talks about it. Well, for me, that was everything of the faith. When the sister first said that Jesus Christ is God, he came to earth as a baby. I didn't know any of this. He became a baby, and he came to earth. God came to earth for you, out of love for you. He died on the cross, but he wanted to stay with you. So now that piece of bread, like she explained the whole thing in simple terms. But now that piece of bread, actually it's not a piece of bread, because when the priest prays over it, it becomes Jesus Christ. He stays in the bread for you. And for me, I knew nothing of the faith, and I said, Jesus is God, of course he can do that. Like, yeah, of course, okay, yes. And from the moment she said it, from the moment the words left her mouth, I had a complete faith in what she was saying. Like 100%, I didn't doubt it at all. Which I believe was a grace of our Marian charism. Because as the servants of the pierced hearts of Jesus and Mary, we're called to be the living image and presence of the Blessed Mother. So I know that sitting on that Newman Center floor, as the sisters gave the Bible studies and me like writing down every word she said, I had this conviction in my heart that I was sitting at the school of Our Lady's heart. And that as our sisters spoke, it was actually Our Lady's words that were piercing my heart. It was the voice of one of my sisters, but it was really Our Lady who was speaking directly to me, because only she has that kind of power to proclaim the truth, and you can just, it's like an infusion of faith in that moment. So after that, I went through RCIA. I became Catholic. I received my first communion. I was baptized. I was confirmed on Easter Vigil of April 3rd, 2021 with Sister Gabrielle. I met Sister Gabrielle in college. She was going through RCIA, and she has a very similar story to mine. And we became best friends. And then the Lord is so funny. It was not our plan at all, but he ended up calling both of us at the same time. I remember we would drive around until like 4 a.m. in her car, and we would eat McDonald's, and we would just talk about the sisters the whole time. And we'd be like, okay, if you become a sister, and I become a mom, then I'm gonna bring my kids to the convent, and you can be like their like nun aunt. And it's like, okay. And if I become a sister, if you become a sister and I become a mom, then I'll bring my kids to you. Or like, if we like both become sisters, then, and we would like talk, or we'd like say all these things to each other in the car, really. We would just talk, our entire conversation, we'd drive for like 4 hours, you know, when you can just talk with someone for forever. That was like us in college, and now. We would just talk forever, and we would just talk about the sisters the whole time. But we'd be like, you know, if it's really your vocation, or if it's really my vocation, like, if the Lord is really calling us, we don't really know. And we would just talk about the sisters. But it was actually a month after my baptism. We went to a pilgrimage to Colorado. We went in the footsteps of St. John Paul II when he went for World Youth Day. And we hiked where St. John Paul II hiked, and the sisters gave talks, and we had praise and worship adoration. It was powerful. It was a month after I had just been baptized at 18 years old. So all of my sin had been washed away. I was going to Mass every single day. I was in such a state of grace that the Lord, and my heart was so open and so hungry for more of Him, that the Lord could speak so powerfully to my heart. So we're on this pilgrimage, and usually when the sisters would speak, I would take ferocious. The word ferocious was very fitting. Sister Allison, she made that Kahoot. I would take ferocious notes. Like really, I would write so fast because I didn't want to miss any single word. But when Mother spoke, she gave a talk through Zoom. And when Mother spoke, I don't know what was happening to me, but I couldn't even write a single word. It was like I was on the edge of my seat and my heart was pounding in my chest, and I couldn't explain it, but I felt like I knew her. Like it felt like something in my heart, like I had known her for forever. I'm gonna start crying. I knew her for forever, and I didn't know what was happening to me because that had never happened to me with any other human person on earth. And Mother's speaking, and she's sharing about growing up in Nicaragua and all these beautiful stories of her youth. And as she was speaking, I heard a voice in my heart, like Sister Samantha said, not a voice booming from heaven, but so clear in my heart. Say, leave everything and follow her. And I knew it was the voice of our Lord and the voice of Our Lady. I heard it like two voices like speaking to me at the same time. And I knew it was the two hearts. And they were telling me that she was my spiritual mother. And again, it was kind of like that infusion of grace that after that moment, I ran up after the talk, really, directly after the talk, I ran up to one of our sisters and I said, Sister, again, like in the Mass, I don't know what just happened. I don't know what just happened. I didn't understand anything. I was learning everything. I was learning how to pray still. And I said, I don't know what just happened, but Mother Adela is my mother foundress. Mother Adela is my spiritual mother, and I'm supposed to be her spiritual daughter. And I want to enter the convent. I want to go to Miami like right now. I want to drop out of college, and I want to go to Miami like right now. And the sister was like, okay, let's take a walk. Like let's go talk for a little bit. And so we walked around the mountains together and spoke for probably like 2 hours. And it was only a year after that I did come home. And I remember all those years of when my family didn't have a home. And I would kneel down by my bed and I would say, God, if you're real, then my parents would go to all these different houses and they would look at the houses and I would be like, oh, let this one be the house, let this one be the house. So I'd pray, God, if you're real, please let this house be our family's home so that we can live in a home again. But I've understood now that the Lord was preparing me for a home, and it's this one. It's not this house, it's the home of our religious family, the home of our charism, the heart of my mother foundress, our spiritual family, our apostles, my sisters, my brothers. And so I can't explain it, but in 9 days, I'm going to give my life totally to the Lord with my sisters who I've walked with now for 3 years. And I have never been happier in my life. Amen.